So I'd like to ask this first panelist walk on the stage as I make their introductions. We are a leader in innovation. Montana's led the way in transforming the economy. This is called Companies Transforming Their Industry. Our first panel today focuses on that topic. We're joined by Scott Sainert, Vice President and Senior Commercial Banker at First Interstate Bank, who's going to moderate it. The panel, Dr. Sundar Ramamurthy, Group Vice President and General Manager of Applied Materials. If you don't know who and what Applied Materials does, you will know by the end of this panel. Very, very important part of our supply chain as it relates to semiconductors right here in Montana. Mark Schultz, Vice President Safety, Training and Operations Support at BNSF Railway. We have Bruce Fleming, EVP of Montana Renewables, the Calumet Specialty Products Partners. I was just up in Great Falls touring their operation a couple weeks ago. We have Manish Jindal, Group Vice President, Research and Development, Charter Communications, and Brian Bird, President CEO of Northwestern Energy. Welcome. Enjoy our first panel.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Daines, Todd, and the Chamber staff, and the audience for being here, taking a whole day out of your time for this important event. My name's Scott Sainert. I am with First Security Bank, part of the Glacier Bank Corporation. In addition to my banking duties with First Security, I'm also the chair of the Montana Manufacturers Association, which really allows me to tour the state and visit with manufacturers around the state and see the innovation and things that, it's just amazing things going on in Montana, and you'll hear from some of those Montana companies today. This morning we're going to hear from our panelists on how they're transforming their companies and their industries in these very, what I would say, some difficult times that we're all experiencing. So we'll start off, and I'll just ask each of you to introduce yourself, describe your company's ties to Montana, and briefly, in your own words, define innovation within your company and industry.
Hi there. Brian Bird, President and Chief Operating Officer at Northwestern Energy. I've been doing that for about a year. I was the CFO at the company for 17 years prior to that. Montana, even though the company operates in 3 states, I think Montana, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and we do serve Yellowstone National Park, which in some cases is a state in and of itself. Happy to serve those, but 80% of our business is right here in Montana. 80% of our employees, we have 1,500 employees, 1,200 of them here in Montana. So it's a big part of the state. I think I'd add to that from an investment standpoint, we're going to invest over $500 million in our infrastructure from both a gas and electric utility perspective in 2022, and more than 80% of that will be in the state of Montana. Quick point to Scott's point on innovation, what's the utility guy going to tell us about innovation? I mean, electric and gas utility? I'm going to try to change your thinking about that a little bit. Think about, we've been in business for 100 years. We're in 1922, our product, electricity, was sold for 9 cents a kilowatt hour. Today, it's approximately 12 cents a kilowatt hour. That's 33% over 100 years. You all probably go to the grocery store, get a dozen eggs. In 1922, 35 cents. Those of you who are buying them today, it's up 700%. So when I think of innovation, think of how our world would be different if electricity costs had gone up 700% over that time, and what wouldn't have happened in this country or the world if we hadn't been innovative in that regard. That's affordability. I'd also talk about reliability. I think everyone knows Montana's a huge state relative to others. We're sparsely populated, however, and we have a very vast rural customers that we need to serve. We're the only electric utility that I know that can say we have more poles than customers. And we're proud of that fact. And the reason we're proud of that fact, you add to that the terrain to serve our customers here and the weather to serve our customers here. And we're still in the top half of reliability in the utility industry. That's innovation. That's how I define it for the first 100 years. And using technology and other tools today, we're going to continue to be innovative on a going forward basis.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I think I'm part of Applied Materials. I'm Sundar Ramamurthy. I've been at Applied, this is my 26th year. And as a company, Applied's been in about 6 decades since inception. And to put it in a nutshell, the reason we exist today is actually dovetailing to what Brian just said. The biggest challenge that our industry is facing, actually the world is facing, is scarcity of power. And the rate at which we are going to be consuming power is just extraordinary, extraordinary. Let me break this down, right? Applied is a materials innovation focused on providing technology solutions to make possible a better future. We believe digital transformation is accelerating virtually every industry. There is no two ways about it. And most importantly, that transformation is irreversible. Irreversible. So at the heart of that is data. I think we heard about this yesterday. Data is the new oil. But the difference is data is being generated faster than you can mine or rig up oil, right? In fact, just 4 years ago, machines started generating more data than humans. What I mean by that is the pictures we take, bits and bytes that we store in the cloud, machines started generating more data just 4 years ago. Just 3 years ahead, 99% of data generated is going to be machines in 2025. So if you kind of put that together and the compute power needed, storage power needed, it's going to really, really drive the power requirements. In fact, what we talk about big data and AI, just in 3 years, almost 20% of world's energy production is going to get sucked up in data calculation, inference at the edge, pushing information out, actions to be taken. All of this compute power is going to be draining the power requirements that are going to be demanding in our industry. So where does Applied fit in? Right? If you think about reduction in power, can we get more efficient? So right at the heart of digital transformation is semiconductor chips, as you well know. So Applied makes capital equipment that is virtually in every microfabrication facility that makes chips. And if you kind of set the context right, the most advanced processor in your laptop or your tablets or your smartphones is about the size of a thumbnail, all right? It has about 30 to 40 miles of copper wiring. Think about it. 30 to 40 miles of copper wiring in that one thumbnail, less than half a millimeter thick chip. So you can have, you can understand how fine these lines need to be, and anytime you add more lines, that's resistance. Right, so we work at the fundamental level of really enforcing how can we put these fine lines at low resistivity, and that's where Kalispell comes to the rescue. We have an electroplating division in Kalispell, Montana here, and these guys do a phenomenal job of putting down this extremely thin wiring at the chip level. They make capital equipment and technology innovation that makes possible. So you have about 350,000 square feet of footprint in Kalispell, about 800 employees here. And this is an incredibly critical path for lowering the resistance of interconnect and wiring. And that's going to be super important for us to continue to push the envelope of innovation, particularly with the digital transformation. This is irreversible. So we have to get in front of it. And we're really proud of having our facility in Kalispell where, it's actually been 4 decades. Applied acquired this company called Semitool about 12 years ago. But the roots for this electroplating technology has been in Montana for over 4 decades. And we're really proud to have this team. And we have been growing almost 20 to 30% in our headcount just during the pandemic. So this is a huge effort on our part. And I think I'm incredibly enthusiastic. It's never been a better time to be a materials engineer. And I say this every time. And I'll do this all over again. 25 years and counting and Applied. And Montana is my second home. Brian's been a fantastic leader here locally, and we'll continue to push innovation here. Thank you.
Good morning. So you're starting to hear a couple of themes already. There's a bunch of old line infrastructure guys up here on a panel for change and transformation. Change and transformation are always with us. I'm going to tell a couple Montana stories, although I'm intimidated by Steve Daines because he told a great one. You're either going to lead the change or get dragged along behind it. And in my industry, which is petroleum refining, if you get dragged along behind the change, you're going to be gone. I started my career when there were 300 refineries in this country. 60% of them are closed. That happens for a lot of reasons. One is regular competition in the market. It's a tough industry. It needs a lot of capital. If the returns aren't there, the investors don't give you the money. The second is regulatory drivers. We exist to provide services. We provide the services that the communities and the stakeholders ask us to provide, and we do it in the manner they want us to do it. We want to be good citizens in our community. And as science advances, as understanding improves on the effects of emissions, let's say, we clean it up. I'm proud of an industry that today offers very clean fuels at a very low cost. I could tell the same story Brian did. The inflation-adjusted cost of energy is quite low. It has lifted huge portions of the world out of poverty. Try running a society that doesn't have the energy to make fertilizer for the farmers to make crops more efficient. Try feeding people. Try coming up with clean water as populations grow. We've served all of those needs and more. I think petroleum refining was doing ESG before it was topical. We took lead out of gasoline. We took sulfur out of all of our products. We took ozone-forming chemicals out. We took out of diesel the things that make soot and particulates, which are now understood to be bad actors. Now we're being asked to remove carbon. And so the next evolution in an industry that's quite old, my company owns a refinery in Great Falls that's been there 100 years. I got a plaque from the Great Falls Historical Society for that. It's an accomplishment to be a survivor that long and to have gone through all of these changes. That's going to continue. So what we're about is we found a way, and this is the Montana innovation. We're going to show the way. We're going to run less crude oil. We're not going to stop that. There's no reason to. It's needed. But we can take part of our equipment and convert it to renewable feedstocks. So starting in September, we're going to run things that came from acreage, things that grew. They grew in plants, they grew in animals. They're byproducts at the end of those food supply chains. They come to us and we transform them back into diesel, jet fuel, renewable hydrogen we will have. And that's a good innovation that's happening here in Montana. Why would that be the case? Well, don't try the same thing in California. The guys that are trying to will be lucky to get a permit to do it at all. Montana, on the other hand, and Steve Daines and Governor Gianforte both talked about this yesterday, very business friendly. We needed permits to make these changes. We're a regulated industry, and we asked the state, we told them what we were going to do, we filled out the paperwork and applied for it, and that was approved in months. In a prior life, I had a project that after 5 years still wasn't ready for approval. It's nothing compared to the 37 years for the copper mine that Steve talked about, but you get the point. Business friendly matters. Montana is a net energy exporter to the rest of the nation. That's something to be proud of. And so I'll leave you with the thought that what the infrastructure guys do up here is to provide the platform for the real exciting innovations you're going to hear later, medical technology, pharmaceuticals. But that all has to stand on something. We all stand on the shoulders of what came before. And 100 years in Great Falls is a nice place to stand for the next 100 years as we pivot to renewable fuels as we are being asked to do. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and good morning. My name is Mark Schultz. I'm the Vice President of Operations Support at BNSF Railway. I've got our safety programs, training programs, and operations technology. And it's a daunting task when you hear what's a 100-year-old utility going to tell you about innovation. We're a 170-year-old railroad, so the challenge has been set. But innovation has been key to who we are and how we've operated for all those 170 years. You can look at us as an industry, and so many of the innovations in the United States have taken place because of railroads, whether it's time zones back in the 1800s, whether it's barcodes, which were utilized in the 1940s and 50s, all the way to even your chairlifts at the ski resorts. That was designed and implemented by a railroader. So railroads are known for innovation. On the operations technology side, we're doing a lot of good and unique things right now, especially on the locomotive front. We're exploiting battery-powered technology for locomotives. While it's not ready for prime time yet, we're still testing it and making it better. We'll also be testing a hydrogen-powered locomotive later this year. So we are moving in the right way to make sure that we can participate in the evolving economy. But the most important reason I'm here today is because of the importance of you all that are here, or since I'm from Texas, y'all. If you need translation, let me know. But actually my background, family, I've got deep roots in Montana, from Plentywood to Eureka to Cutbank to Wolf Point to Billings. My grandfather actually went to college here, Montana State College, graduated in 1927, just passed away last year, 8 days short of 110. So I know this is a great state to live in, just the number of centenarians and super centenarians that live in this state. It's a great state to be. You're here for a good reason, and we're here to help support you. We've got 2,500 miles of railroad that helps move your goods. We moved 300,000 carloads of Montana materials last year. We want to move more. We have a bias for growth at BNSF. Over the last 25 years, BNSF has grown in volume by over 40%, while the rest of the railroad industry has declined by about 15%. BNSF has a bias for growth to move your goods and move them to market in a safe, efficient, and productive way. And so I look forward to being here, to talking on this panel, and also answering any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Manish Jindal. I'm the Group Vice President of Wireless Research and Development at Charter Communications. Charter Communications is a leading broadband connectivity provider and a cable operator that provides internet, video, voice, and mobile services to more than 32 million customers across 41 states. And we are also the fastest growing wireless provider. We are around 3.9 million wireless subscribers now, and we are providing the competition to the wireless industry by doing that, and providing a high-speed solution at a very competitive price. Now, in the last 4 years alone, we have added 4 million lines to new households, and 1 million of them were actually in rural areas. So we really understand and know what it takes to provide high-speed internet in the rural areas and the complexities it comes with. In Montana alone, we have provided service to over 257,000 customers in 55 communities. We have close to about 600 employees here. We pay about $16 million in taxes and fees, and we've done capital investment of $48 million in 2021 alone. And we provided additional reach for 9,000 homes within the last year within Montana itself. From an innovation perspective, what we look at is providing new ways of providing connectivity to our customers using a fiber-fed high-speed internet as well as the wireless services. Now, Sundar was talking about, the amount of data that is coming through is going to just grow by leaps and bounds. Where's this data going to go over? It'll be over these connectivity solutions. And so what we have seen is over a period of time, we have grown in terms of connectivity speeds over almost 4,000%, whereas the cost has come down to almost 96 to 98%. And that you need innovation to drive those kind of things. We understand that the data growth is going to be 10x, even more, right? How do we do that in such a way that the costs stay within reason and we're able to catch up to the amount of data that's being generated? And so we know that by providing these high-speed internet services and low latency services, it becomes truly the platform for digitization of these industries, right? So I'm sure we'll talk in more details about other industries that we will help in digitization. Think about, the healthcare systems. Think about the farmlands that, if we can digitize them, having a farmer from the farmhouse manage over 250 acres of farmland without having to leave the farmhouse, right? So those are some of the innovations that we are driving towards.
Great, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Manish, and we'll work back this way. Since the pandemic began in the early 2020, we've seen continued headwinds with other COVID variants, supply chain challenges, workforce shortages, inflation, high energy costs, rising interest rates, and the war in Ukraine. And sorry for all the downers there. How have you all navigated your company through these headwinds, and what do you recommend for those in the audience to consider? And also, when I meant to add, navigate your company and your teams, because this has been challenging on all of our teams over the past 2 years. And, we've seen changes in the workforce and how people work from home or work remotely or come into the office. And so there's been a lot of headwinds. I'd like to hear from each of you how you've navigated through those.
Yeah, talk about the pressure of making sure that you have internet service in your homes when when all of work, learning, everything moves to home, right? The whole country was literally relying on that. So we've spent over $40 billion in last 5 years or so, from 2017 to 2021, in making sure that we have the latest technologies on the network, right? And so this is the private investment that has been ongoing. And so when the pandemic hit, we were actually ready for it. We were able to handle the increase in data consumption, the increase in speeds that were required, because without this kind of investment and upfront innovation that I was talking about, there was just no way we could have handled this kind of data surge that we saw during the pandemic, right? So that's been very, very important. Now, on top of that, when you look at these innovations that we were talking about, it's also very important that we train, when you look at the rural areas, right? There's a lot of money that is coming from the government. The federal government has allocated a lot of money in order to improve the connectivity. But the problem is that we don't have skilled workers in the rural areas. So what do we do with that? So we've created these programs. We invest a lot of money and incentivize our workers to learn on the job. We also have a broadband field technician certification program, and this is more like an apprenticeship program that we provide. So our workers get on-the-job training, they get certification. So once they finish this training, they actually get certification from the labor department. So basically what that means is that they're able to take this certification throughout their career, right? And so the more and more people we can actually help become skilled workers, the better we can do from this perspective. Then you look at, we had, Charter has been the participant from day one in the emergency broadband benefits program, and that eventually became the ACF, the Affordability Connecting Program. And as part of the program, what we saw was that every eligible household would get $30, up to $30 in discount towards their connectivity service. And with that $30, pretty much, we would be able to provide a free internet service to them if they were eligible. Then on top of that, we provided in 2021 alone, by the end of 2020, I would say, about 450,000 students, teachers, and families, we provided them with connectivity of up to 200 megabits per second. And then on top of that, we also had 700,000 homes that were connected where, if they couldn't afford or they couldn't pay on a monthly basis, we forgave almost $85 million of the past dues. So we didn't go after the past dues or terminate their connectivity, et cetera. We kept it going because we knew how important that was during that time. So, when you look at the importance of providing the connectivity, the importance of making sure that we have skilled workers in these areas, that's how we believe we can handle the situation.
Definitely a lot of challenges over the last couple of years that have been enumerated. Over the last 170 years, we've seen a lot of challenges, from world wars to weather events, whatever it might be. And I think we've become quite good at being a SEF railway, at being very resilient. Resiliency, 1,000 times resiliency. We've put together programs, planning tools, and executed against them in really strong ways. If there's an avalanche in Glacier National Park, we will put the tools and resources to it, whether it's helicopters, whatever, to get that line open, because we've got to make sure that we continue to move the goods or things start getting backed up. If a flood takes out a bridge across the Mississippi River, we'll find a way to get that reopened within a couple of days. We have excellent planning skills that we've put in place and execution against that planning that allows us to become very resilient. And we've got to be that way, because if something happens on a railroad, you only have one track, maybe two, double track, and in some cases you'll be blessed with 3 tracks that you might be able to move the goods. But if that one track, and you only have the one track, is down, you've got to start figuring out a lot of different ways. And it's much more challenging than a lot of other logistics industries. Like an airline gets to reset their network every night and pick up a plane basically and put it in the places that they need to be and start their day the next morning at 6 a.m. and start flying everywhere. For us, something happens, we can't pick up a train or a locomotive and move it to where we want it to be. We have to make sure it moves on that track. And so, again, we look at a lot of planning, whether it's strategic planning, 5-year plans, 10-year plans, even thinking out the next 25 years, what we need from a capacity perspective, because it does take a little while. And then also the tactical planning, and then making sure that our employees are trained and ready to execute against those plans. And then the last thing is really partnering with our employees, our customers, our communities, and our public policy makers to make sure that we are moving forward in the right direction to make sure that we can weather those challenges that were outlined.
So you mentioned the airlines. They took the plane I was supposed to be on and moved it somewhere else. I think everybody's had the experience of a flight delayed, a flight canceled. Beginning of COVID, you go to the supermarket. This week there's no meat. Next week there's no milk. Somebody took all the toilet paper. Somebody else took all the cereal. When you interrupt supply chains that have a lot of moving parts, you can get those sorts of shortages. And then it feeds on itself. People panic and go out and buy up all the rest. Raise your hand if that happened when you wanted to get some gasoline at the service station, because I don't think so. Raise your hand if your power went out for 3 months because that supply chain got snarled. Raise your hand if the gas was off at your gas burner in your kitchen. So one of the critical things about delivering energy, delivering utility services, is that it's reliable. If it's not, you're probably working for a company that's going to go out of business. The customers are going to find another way to get a reliable service. So we're inherently, we in the energy business, there's 3 energy businesses. There's the national electric grid, which Brian can talk about. There's the national gas grid, and then there's all of the liquid fuels. These are distributed systems. They're inherently decentralized. There's a lot of infrastructure, some redundancy, not completely, but you've come to count on that being reliable. So the last couple of years, the current disruptions really haven't been an issue to any of us. North America is a big island. If we were pipeline connected to Russia, we'd be sitting here wondering why there's no gas, but we're not, and we aren't. So there's a lot of advantages. Part of your question was, maybe what to watch out for, if I paraphrase. Watch out for this. If people that don't understand these systems, don't understand the enormous complexity, don't understand all of the interrelationships, want to show up casually and regulate some piece of this, micromanage what a company is doing, watch out, because it's going to stop being reliable. It's going to stop working.
So I think, it's really a trifecta, right? The Ukraine effect, supply chain, pandemic, and really in our industry, the chip shortage, which has been in the headlines everywhere, is a big part of our supply chain problem as well. And certainly we are in the crosshairs. But let me just take a moment to talk about, on the pandemic, right? It's, the communities we serve, we want to make possible a better future. We really put, emphasis on our employees and our supply chain, people that come to work to help us through our, vendor relationships and whatnot. And, I've been very inspired, looking around, talking to people, what creativity has come about in trying to, surmount the challenges that we have. There's a few things that we have been doing, which, frankly, the Kalispell team has been a role model for the rest of the company that I want to talk about. One is, we've started deploying digital tools, right, where you can get people. Through this pandemic, and I mentioned we have about 800 employees in Kalispell, almost 300 of our manufacturing teams were employed, coming into work in our factories in a very safe environment with no ill health consequences. So we really deployed all the best practices in terms of social distancing. We actually brought food in. It was free food, so we minimized the number of interfaces and touch points these employees had. These small things go a long way. We talked about work from home. Applied pretty much, paid for free internet for the last 2 years or so, I think, for all our employees, because we recognize that everyone's going to be consuming bandwidth. Particularly in Kalispell, our employees volunteered to repurpose some of our 3D printers to manufacture face shields to go support frontline first responders. So I think these are the kinds of things that really inspire for us to do more and more, even in our headquarters and other places. So people really most important, and we wanted to make sure we took care of employees, right? In relation to Ukraine, we have we have a corporate giving program with Applied Materials Foundation matches dollar for dollar. Instantly, we raised a lot of relief funds for that. We are a global company. We have presence in Europe, so we have volunteers in Europe that pull together basic supplies for refugees to be able to contribute. I think it's at moments like this where you make crisis turn into opportunity. One example of that is supply chain, right? We could never get our sub-tier suppliers to go invest in the long term, right? Now with this entire automotive industry, switching and realizing, oh my God, just in time doesn't work. I need just in case, right? So that's pushed very different behaviors. We have taken this opportunity to engage with our suppliers in ways that we previously couldn't. Now we get forecasts for at least 4 quarters out, right? So there's much better planning we can do. We have more closer partnerships with customers. They would never let, for fear of IP. Now they're thinking up front and saying, if I can't get the expert here flying across into my factory, how do I troubleshoot the problems that I have to keep the line going? Well, HoloLens to the rescue, right? We used tools like that deployed where even if you have semi-trained or untrained labor right in the front line, you would have our expert in our headquarters or in Kalispell be able to walk through these steps of digital tools in terms of, how do you do preventive maintenance, how do you do troubleshooting the tools. So I think really these are things that I would have, argued a couple of years ago that industry is not going to be, adopting these changes. But boy, I tell you, a crisis like this, it really turns people into think about creative ways to solve problems. So these are some ideas, hopefully some of you are already deploying that. If there are other ideas that others are doing, I'm all ears, because this is an opportunity where as a community we should be able to collaborate a lot more. And there's several parallels to this, right? It's not just restricted to one industry or the other. So these are some of the things that we've been doing.
Thanks to my other colleagues here, I can focus on just really 2 things. Let's think prices and people. From a price perspective, you're paying utility bills, and I appreciated the senator's comments earlier today how important energy is. And let's face it, many of us take advantage of when we flick that switch, if that light's going to go on or not. We just assume it's going to happen. or if we need to operate our gas fireplace, that's going to happen. And so the crisis that occurs elsewhere in the world, we get nervous about it ourselves. We experienced it a couple Februaries ago. Our South Dakota business, we had rolling blackouts because of outages in the southern part of the U.S. We're a part of SPP, and we had to do our part in that regard. Montana, we had a close call during that same time period. It was cold pretty much all the western half of the U.S. And so what we're running on is a shortage of capacity, and I'll speak more to capacity if we've got time later, but it causes an issue in terms of upward prices. It's impacting, when you think about gas, and by the way, let's be, when we walk out of here, acknowledge that because of fracking of natural gas, gas prices have been extremely low for about 15 years. And that has helped you. Your utility bills are going up on the gas side, but they've been much lower than they had been as a result of that. And your bill, think of it both in electric and gas, real quickly, and I'm approximating here. It's about 50% supply and about 50% transmission, distribution, and everything else. And that supply portion of your bill is, and by the way, electricity benefits from lower gas prices too. That half of your bill has been pretty low for years. But as we see increased pressure in natural gas prices, your bills are going to go up 50%. We don't profit on that. That's a pass-through. I just want to make sure people are aware of that. I'll also tell you the other portion of your bill, the other 50%, we're nervous about that as well. Our prices are going up. Supply chain issues, and Bruce's point about reliability, we're concerned about being able to get the tools we need and the supplies to provide reliable service. I know you don't think utilities are in a competitive space. I always knew as a CFO we competed for capital, but now, as a chief operating officer, I'm competing with other utilities to get the stuff I need to serve you as our customers. And it's difficult, and as a result, they have to raise their prices. So I'm sorry I'm painting kind of a difficult picture, but that's what's going on from a price perspective. I think we'll continue to do what we can and try to keep those costs as low as we can, but I wanted at least to make you aware of that. On the people front, one thing I should point out, it's difficult in our industry. If you were all white-collar employees and you can all go work from home, fantastic, but we're not. We have electric and gas personnel that, and you saw them, when there were outages or issues, you saw Northwestern Energy trucks during the pandemic and likewise. And so we had to operate in a bit of a quasi. Yeah, we sent some people to work from home, but as we are today, my concern about that as a utility, as a company, we've lost, I believe, some degree of that family feel we had as an organization because of that dichotomy of people working from home and not people who can't. And so we're encouraging everybody to get back in the office as much as they can, but also we have to also have flexibility. We have during the pandemic through today, in the last 5 years, our workforce has turned over 25%. And a lot of those new employees are looking for flexibility. So we'd have to try and make that all work during a difficult time. And by the way, we have a 10% open positions. Those 1,500 employees we talked about, we need those 150 people to provide reliable service. And it's tough to attract and retain employees in this difficult environment and rising wages. So that's also going to have an impact on prices too. So it was a pretty bleak list you provided there, Scott, but I think we also have to understand that all of these industries have been around for a while. We're going to adapt. We're going to learn. We're going to grow. We're going to fight through this. And I think longer term, through innovation, we'll find a way to find the right spot from a price perspective. We'll find the right spot in terms of how we get our people engaged to do what they need to deliver what you would expect from us as your utility.
Great, thank you. And I apologize for that list. Next question, and one of the common themes is that I'm hearing from everybody is resiliency, teamwork, and innovation, obviously. So the third question that I'm going to ask is, what do each of you see as, in your opinion, the biggest challenge facing us as a global business community? And I apologize for switching this up a little bit, and the follow-up was how would you address, but I'd also like to know how would you turn these challenges into opportunities for the global business community, for the folks sitting out here listening? Right.
Yeah, I'll start. I mentioned capacity earlier, and I appreciate the senator's comments earlier this morning. The governor gets it. The chamber, we appreciate the support we get. One of the biggest issues we have is capacity. We need more supply. We need electric generation supply. We need more gas supply. We need more electric and gas transmission. And if you think that's easy to site or build these days, it's not. And there are a lot of people who are trying to stop us from doing exactly that. But the issue is we need to do it to be able to provide, not only to serve you today, but as you're going to hear throughout this conference, Montana's growing. And we have been cutting into latent capacity that we've had as a result of trying to support the growth that we had and do that in a cost-effective manner. But we've got to move. We've got to invest in both in electric and gas transmission, and we have to build out supply in the state. You might recall the state deregulated a long time ago, and Montana Power sold all its assets. We've been buying assets back, but we still need more. And by the way, since 2011, we've added over 700 megawatts of carbon-free resources. By the way, the cornerstone of that is over 400 megawatts of hydro facility. It's the best renewable resources you can have. And so I know you may read the media and you think about Northwestern as this fossil fuel company, but we're a third hydro, a third wind, and a third fossil fuel resources. And those fossil fuel resources provide the capacity on the coldest days and the hottest days of the year to deliver to you. And we have to have those resources. We need to have a balance. I heard the words from the senator. That's exactly what we need. So one thing I'd ask all of you today is, you think about when you hear Northwestern's trying to do this or do that, we have an obligation to serve you. And you may not like potentially how we're doing it in a part way, but you're really going to be agitated with us if we can't deliver the electric and gas you have. We know what we're doing. We've been doing this for 100 years. We need to solve this capacity problem, and we need your help.
Yeah, I mean, our challenges are, the immediate term is, no surprise supply chain, right? Some of our products are 2 years out from the time we get a PO, and that's completely unacceptable. And the context is, factories, put our tools 6-7 months, prior to a holiday season when you have, more tablets and the smartphones and whatnot, chips for those technologies. So having a 24 or 48 month, in some cases, supply chains are so out of whack that we're not able to manage that. But we're kind of trying to turn it around and see where can we verticalize. And in Kalispell, even though our primary business there is electroplaters for the industry, over the last few years, we've actually, turned our manufacturing footprint to be able to, bring in some raw materials and turn them into modules and parts that can serve other product lines too. So we figured we're gonna try to do more of that, and we've been doing that. But right on the heels of that problem is our biggest problem, and I think that's talent. Right, talent is a huge, huge issue for us. And particularly in our industry, the kind of skilled labor that we need. And so if there is anything that we could do, we're very motivated to wanting to continue to grow. We just had a ribbon cutting ceremony for another 100,000 square feet space that we just bought here. We're starting to move tools in there. We need to bring capable talent in, and that's been a big issue. We can onboard employees fast, right? But kind of getting the right skill set continues to be a huge problem. It's a global problem, but it's a particularly acute problem for us in the United States, because I think there hasn't been enough impetus in STEM programs, that prepares us for the kind of investments that we need to make in the next decade or two, the infrastructure that's needed. It's never been a good time to be an engineer. I keep saying this. I gave a guest lecture recently in another university. We need engineers, all kinds of engineers, and we need them now. And I think with the amount of investment that we're going to make, I believe, through things like CHIPS Act and whatnot, for our industry, we don't have the pipeline of talent. So, anything, we could leverage, the fulcrum of the summit to kind of drive home that message, so we can, spur STEM and STEAM, all areas of disciplines and skills, and get that pipeline going so that we can have a very skilled labor force to attack these challenges in our industry.
That's the question's actually a really tough one. All five of us up here work for companies in industries which see over time more and more demand from our customers. They want various things. They want more quantity, they want more quality, more service. And If you run into a situation where we don't anticipate that with enough lead time to get the permits to build the facilities, then there's going to be a shortage. There will be a physical shortage. You can't get what you want, and the immediate consequence of that is runouts and high prices. And that's not rocket science. What probably does look like rocket science to a lot of people is the way the whole energy infrastructure works. I mean, I've been doing this for 45 years, and I've become convinced that most of the people in my own industry probably don't understand it. It's large, it's vast, and your job is this little piece down here. It's hard to see the whole thing. And so against that backdrop, if we fail to engage, so as companies or as an industry, if we don't engage with the communities, we're going to be engaged by the regulators. The regulators are simply telling us to do what they think the community wants done. And if you're behind the curve, you're inviting the micromanaging I mentioned earlier. If you like what's going on with disrupted supply chains in the last 2 years, you will love it when we stop investing in energy infrastructure, which it kind of looks like we have. We are all close to capacity in all of our businesses. That means there's a finite amount of time left, and I mean a year or two, before we're going to reach capacity limits, because the growth keeps coming. The underlying demand growth is always there, but we're going to run out of the ability to serve it. High gasoline prices today are a symptom. It's not a problem, you haven't run out, but nobody likes the price. You're really not going to like that a couple more years down the road. So getting ahead of that, having enough foresight, having enough conversations, and getting enough help, I'll call it, from the regulatory process in Washington, D.C., those are all critical. You know, we're not going to solve this on Twitter.
We face a lot of the similar challenges that have been enumerated already. I'll pick a couple of them. The biggest one I'll start with is probably the massive restructuring of the labor markets that we've seen. The workforce participation post-pandemic, it's really changed. And so the way that we get supply for our labor force has changed, and there's difficulties there, and our labor capital ratios have started to change in that regard. Unlike others, it takes us a while to onboard an employee, up to 6 months to identify, hire, and train. Part of that's regulatory issues, others just things that the market currently presents. So we're in the hiring mode. We're offering incentives. We're looking for up to 2,500 people that we'll be hiring this year. Fairly significant hiring plan that we're looking to execute against. So labor is probably the biggest challenge that we're facing right now. Another one I'll point to is the regulatory modernization. In some respects, we're dealing with what seemed like Civil War era regulation when we're trying to deploy what's not even Star Wars technology. The regulations have not caught up with where we are from what we need to employ and deploy into our operations in order to take advantage of the innovation that we've seen. And so we'll continue to work with our regulators in that and making sure that we can employ the technologies that will make us a safer, more efficient, and more sustainable operation.
Yeah, the theme is all about labor, skilled labor, more labor. So who am I to disagree with that, right? So it literally it is, right? I was, even on the previous question I was talking about, there's just so much money coming from the government, but we just don't have enough skilled labor to do this work. And so, we have over 93,000 plus employees make a minimum of at least $20 an hour. And that's almost close to 3 times the federal minimum wage, right? And so we are enticing the labor force to come join us. We are providing the training that's required so that they can take that training with them anywhere else they go. And also on top of that, 10% of our workforce is actually military affiliated. So the apprenticeship program that I was talking about, when they do that, they can also have access to the GI Bill on top of their paycheck, right? So we're trying to do everything we can to entice people to join the workforce more and more. And along with all the dollars that are coming from the government, it's all about getting to the unserved, right? As we get to connecting the rural areas, I think the FCC data says it's somewhere north of 10 million households, could even be close to 14 million households that are still not connected. They don't have reliable high-speed internet or no internet. And so when you're trying to attack that problem, you want to zero in on first, helping the households that have no connectivity, right? And so it has to be very strategically attacked, focus on the unconnected households first, and then go after the others. I know we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to stop there so we can probably get in one more question, hopefully.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're coming down to our time. So, and I apologize, in maybe 30 seconds for each of you, if there's one thing that you would hope that the audience takes away today from our conversation, what would it be? Manish?
Sure. I'll just expand what I just talked about. So one is, eventually we want to get to 100% connectivity, right? That's what we all want. And so once zeroing in on unserved and then going after, other areas that maybe could be a duplicative efforts to provide internet service. So that's one of the correlation I would make. The second part is, what else can we do to speed up this connectivity? And especially in the rural areas, one of the big things are the assets that are called poles, right? So having the make-ready efforts are extremely, extremely important. And so, because that's where our attachment, companies like Charter Communications, our attachment goes onto those poles. And the more make-ready they are, we can shave that time that it takes to connect the households by months, in certain cases even by years. So I know there are existing federal mandates or that talk about the step-wise approaches, the timeline that each of the step needs to be taken in providing that connectivity. We just need to do a little bit more on that side so that, for example, if in a particular step, if the owner of the pole is not able to provide the ready access, then, providers like us should be able to provide simple access to those poles and move on and create a very fast connectivity to that. So again, bottom line is trying to get to the 100% connectivity in rural Americas.
Yeah, for me, first of all, thank you again for this opportunity. Secondly, let's continue to talk and engage. The more we can learn about you as customers and communities, the more we can figure out your needs, how you're innovating, and how you can match with what we're able to provide. And when we have that discussion, that dialogue, and you learn about us and we learn about you, we're going to find that sweet spot, and we're going to continue to grow this business. We believe in Montana. We believe in the opportunity that's here, and we're excited for what's ahead of us. And thank you again. Engagement.
I've lived in 5 countries, counting Texas, which they would have you do. The former British Commonwealth countries are really much better than us at blending the public interests, the private sector, and having regulators and academics kind of tie all that together. We can't allow ourselves to continue to polarize, be engaged. Doesn't matter which side you're on, but if we're not talking to each other, this won't work.
Bruce, were you talking about India by any chance? No, the key takeaway, at least for this audience that I have, is, digital transformation is irreversible, right? we got to get on it now, and I think you cannot afford to fall behind in innovation. So that's my key message. So, anywhere we can spur enthusiasm and inspire our young generation to kind of, be more attuned with high tech, that's, something that's going to really serve us for sustainability for the long term. So really remember, this digital transformation that's touching every industry, and it's irreversible.
I think from our perspective, I didn't talk about safety today, but the first and foremost from our perspective is safety. Beyond that, though, reliability, affordability, and sustainability. The sustainability, we're already got a large head start versus the other industries, 60% carbon-free in Montana, 40% nationwide. So California can talk a good game. They wish they had our hydros. I think I'll go on to say real quickly, capacity though matters. And we're going to be trying to build a gas plant to support Billings. And we're going to run into a lot of headwinds associated with doing that. That's capacity we need to serve our communities. And trust me, don't forget, we added all of those carbon-free resources since 2011 to today. Something needs to be there to offset the variability of those resources. And that's what we're trying to do in Yellowstone County. So 3 seconds left. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a great conversation. Some of the takeaways I had was, obviously collaboration. That's something around the state that we hear all the time, and I do encourage everyone in the audience to, to collaborate as a business community, because the state of Montana is growing. There's some fantastic things going on around the state. I believe our panelists will be around most of the day if you have any questions. Again, I would like to thank Senator Daines for sponsoring this event, the State Chamber for the wonderful venue, and absolutely our panelists for what I thought was a very great conversation. And so I would ask that everybody please give our panelists an applause, and thank you so much.